Oh man, I love this song. Every time I hear it, I can remember where I was and who I was with. It reminds me of the time. Does this sound familiar? Music is like a scent. It can instantly transport you to another time and place. I ask my guests to dish about their song with the memories that go with it. I'm your host, Tiffany Mason. I have a passion for music and a curiosity about how a song affects someone and why. Turn up your radio and let's explore Memories with a Beat. Hello, Podcast Land. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Memories with a Beat. And today I have with me Rob Kassees, and he is joining me as a fellow music lover, and we are going to dive into a little bit of talking heads. So with that being said, Rob, welcome to Memories with a Beat.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate being here.
Yeah, no problem at all. Well, I'm excited. The song is This Must Be the Place, the native melody. And can you tell me what is the deal with all of the things having the parentheses that says native melody?
So, yeah, it's an alternate title for the song, Naive Melody, right? And
Oh,
I think what's
naive.
interesting, yeah, and well, and it's one of the reasons I think I like it because I think that title, that alternate title, if you will, speaks to me. But it is a bit odd in the song lexicon because
Mhm.
oftentimes the parentheses are used to more easily identify what you would think of as the song title when the song is not named the thing you're expecting,
Correct.
right? Like the Pina
Yes.
Colada song is in parentheses, even though the
Yes.
song is called Escape.
Well, and I noticed, like, when I looked it up on other platforms, it was on all of it, and so I'm like, "Okay, there's gotta be something going on with this." Now I thought it said native melody, but clearly I did not sound it out. It's naive melody. So very good. Off of their 5th album, Speaking in Tongues, and actually this was we're going over the remastered version. Now, do you know it was originally released in '83, remastered in 2005? Do you think that the, naive melody came from the remastering?
The title? No, the title's been there since the first Prince,
Got it.
and I don't know exactly why they named it that. Although I have a clue as to why that word naive is based on the lyrics themselves. But I still think it's a bit of an odd choice. They're an artistic band. They make odd artistic choices a lot, I reckon.
What are some other songs by Talking Head that we may be all familiar with?
Sure, I think probably one of their biggest hits is called Burning Down the House. It's on
Okay,
this same LP. So they had a big hit with that in the 80s. Psycho Killer was a big hit for them off of their
okay.
first record. So they were a pretty popular band. They were
Yeah.
around from around 1977 to the mid 80s when they functionally broke up. They're one of these bands that went through a bunch of phases. One of the reasons I've always respected them quite a bit because they change and evolve
Mhm,
the sound
mhm.
as they go. And then would be remiss if I didn't mention that they were a huge band, a huge touring affair in the 1980s. They broke up acrimoniously, famously acrimoniously. They did reunite to play like two songs for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I think in around 2002,
Okay.
and but they have never reunited properly, and I'm sure millions of dollars have been on the table many times.
Mm,
And astute listeners might know, if you're a fan of Talking Heads, that it's somewhat on the table again right now because they've been doing a press tour for
okay.
a remastered kind of re-release of their famous concert film called Stop Making Sense, which was a documentary about their show in the 1980s when they were actually on tour for this exact LP we're talking about.
Oh, cool.
And they like remastered it, redigitized it, put it into IMAX. I actually went to one of the screenings, and it was the first time the band members, all four band members who are still all alive, were in the same room together for 20 years. So they have not been friendly over the years, and
Okay.
I think there's something to respect about that as well. That they didn't take the money. I'm sure they were offered millions to headline Coachella or
Yeah,
a
yeah.
similar place.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, good for them. I mean, sometimes you just know when the timing's right, and the timing must not have been right for them.
Well, it's partly that their background is they met in art school. They went to RISD, Rhode Island School of Design,
Mhm.
and that's where they met. And they have a very artistic flavor to them. So I think like kind of art with a capital A. I think in the mind of at least the lead singer, who's thought of as the primary creative force, his name is David Byrne. They don't love looking back. They like to look forward.
Mm.
And I can
Mm.
I can respect that, even though I'm
Yeah.
too young to have seen them live, sadly, and certainly
Mm.
wish that I had gotten one of those reunion tours, probably more like in the 90s, but it didn't happen, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So you said you have followed them through their full career, and you don't look like you're any older than me. So I have to imagine that was when you were pretty young that you started following them. So when did you discover them?
I discovered them in high school, so this would have been
Okay.
already 10 years after they broke up, I would guess.
Oh, bummer.
And I literally the first thing I ever heard was there were some construction workers, some contractors over at our house working on the awning over our front door, and they had a little miniature radio as people used to have, and Psycho Killer was playing. And I was a weird introverted kid. I suppose I'm just a weird introverted adult now, and the song really stuck out to me. It just had lyrics that I had never heard before in a rock song. It had a cool beat. One of the things that jumps out to you about Talking Heads is the rhythm section, especially the bass. I think the bass played by Tina Weymouth, female bass player. She's actually married to the drummer. They've been married the entire time.
Oh,
From the early days of the band, they're still married to Chris France, the drummer, and I think they really form a great foundation. So it just sort of stuck out to me as strange and
yeah.
odd, and just the idea of singing about a serial killer in a somewhat tongue in cheek way. And I guess I was hooked from there.
Interesting. Okay. I can appreciate that. There's a couple songs that come to mind that I like that are definitely out there and probably not everybody's cup of tea, but you know, they caught my ear and I enjoy them and it is what it is. So that's okay. Now I'm curious, when did you discover this must be the place?
I saw it would have been shortly after that that I
Okay.
picked up a greatest hits compilation, I would
Mm-hmm.
guess, on CD, and this was on it. And I do think this stands out a little bit. It doesn't feel, certainly lyrically, I think it's quite different than a lot of their songs. David Byrne, the singer and lyricist, is known for, he calls it, his lyrical approach is to be an anthropologist from Mars, sort of
Okay.
looking at humanity. Yeah. And so a lot of their tunes are kind of have that level of remove to them, and kind of commentary on human behavior, from a little bit of a distance.
Mm-hmm.
And this one feels by far to me the most sincere, the most like a love song.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the most straight ahead thing I think he's done, and I think it's one of the most brilliant songs ever written. So it jumped out to me even on that greatest hits compilation that I probably picked up when I was 17.
Yeah. Now, is this a CD that you played in your car? Is this a CD that your friends enjoyed? What memories come back to you when this song comes on? You're like, oh man, where do you go?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely reminds me of my childhood, because this really
Mm,
was Talking Heads. I mean, was one of the first bands that felt like my band. And I'll clarify that.
okay.
I grew up kind of a child of the 90s. I was in high school in the 90s, and the music that was on the radio at that time, I enjoyed, Nirvana, Weezer, things like that. But the reality is, as I started getting into music, I really dove into my parents' music, classic rock, the Beatles,
Okay.
Pink Floyd. And I was always just sort of obsessed with that era of music that I had sadly missed out on. And that was more my parents' music. Bob Dylan was another huge touchstone for me. And then it came a point where I started to be able to discover stuff outside of my parents' record collection. And it's a process, as you
Yeah.
can imagine,
Mm-hmm.
because I was listening to classic rock radio and that was part of it. So anyway, I bring up Talking Heads because it was a departure from what my parents liked. They were too old for that music, and I was sort of too young. It's in this generation in between, technically, right? But I felt like I had discovered them and they were my own. And I felt that way even amongst my friends. So I ended up turning my friends on to this band. And I can tell you about more memories with my friends and when I was playing in bands and playing some of these songs. But even back then, it was kind of my discovery that I brought to the group, and everyone dug it. We talked a lot about it, what they're doing as a band, and we're going to get into like why I think the song is cool, not just the lyrics, and why the whole approach to the band is cool.
Yeah.
But it felt like mine.
Yeah, okay, I like that, that's really cool. How did you I don't know if I'd say systematically, but how did you go through your parents' music, and then how did it lead you to this? Like, were you what I'm thinking in my head is kinda like my friend was saying the other day that she was watching some '80s and '90s movies, and, like, whoever the main character was, or actor or actress, she would try to find another movie that they did, so it was kinda like this breadcrumb trail of one
Hmm,
actor to
yeah.
another movie, to another actor, to another movie, and I'm wondering if it was the same kind of thing in this discovery mode for you. Were you going through records? Were you going through CDs? Was it the radio station?
Yeah, it was kind of all of the above
Okay.
because young listeners, it's hard to think of at this time now, but you
Mhm.
you were really limited
Mhm.
in what you could pull up. There was no internet, obviously. There was certainly no streaming. We're quite blessed these days, and we take it for granted that you can kind of just pull up any song at any time, whether it's YouTube or Spotify or whatever. And so back then, you really just had to keep your ears perked up. So, yeah, my parents
Mhm.
didn't have any Talking Heads records. They did have a presence on MTV, which was I would say MTV was a huge influence on me.
Oh, yeah.
It MTV probably premiered when I was 3 years old or something like that, and I watched it religiously for the first until I was at least 14, and when they started kind of transitioning away from just
Okay.
playing videos. But one of the things this band did catch my eye, and I think it planted a seed, that I later came back to,
Mhm.
which was, and people might know this song, Once in a Lifetime. It was the Letting the Days Go By, This Is Not My Beautiful House song. That's also Talking Heads. But I also remember it as one of the very first MTV music videos
Mm.
because if you can imagine, MTV premieres, their premise is that it's a entire network of music and music videos, but there are no music videos yet,
Right.
or there are very few.
Right.
There's some promotional
Mhm.
video clips of people playing 70s bands, things like that. So there were a few artists that hopped on this trend early and took great advantage of it and didn't just make, there's one version of the story where you can just have the band set up on stage, point a camera at you, and that's the video.
Not them, I
Right.
have to
And then there were
imagine.
other artists, and Talking Heads was one that really helped make it into an art form, the music video. I would say
Mhm.
Madonna is another great example who just like
Mhm.
took full advantage of this new technology of music videos to get their music out there. Anyway, so this Talking Heads video for Once in a Lifetime is one of the earliest videos. It looks almost like a home movie, but it is so strange that you could not, and back in the day, because MTV didn't have a lot of options, they would play it a lot.
Yeah.
They kind of played whatever they had. So I think, and they subsequently made videos for this and for Burning Down the House. I definitely saw that on MTV as well. And so I suppose I was kind of generally aware of them, but really I got to it through the weirdness factor, like I said,
Yeah.
where my dad, I think, realized that even the way he got me into the Beatles, he understand that I liked kind of the weirder side of music. And so the first Beatles record I
Uh-huh.
heard was I Am the Walrus, because my father was like, "Oh, this is weird. This weird
Okay.
little kid will like this."
Yeah.
And he was right. So I think it was just the inherent strangeness of it. Like I said, when I eventually did hear Psycho Killer, I was like, "Oh, that's something I should now go to the record store and seek out." And at that time, it was all greatest hits, and that made the most sense to survey what a band could do. I bought a lot of greatest hits CDs back then, and then you can continue to explore from there, which I definitely did.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. So you said you exposed your friends to this music. Did they have that same research quality to them where they were kind of exploring that too? I know this is the one that you really, stuck your flag in the sand saying, I claimed this band. Were there other bands that they ended up discovering that you really like, or did they share in that same research factor looking at older bands, like,
Oh,
did they
sure.
like the more odd music as well as collaborative effort?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, so all my friends are musicians, and one of the reasons I've stayed friends with the same group of people that I knew. back when I was 17, which is great. And we've grown together, right? And a big part of our relationship has always been music. We all play music. We've played in
Mhm.
bands together. We've played
Mm.
shows together, that kind of thing. We now have this weekly podcast, I'm sure we're going to talk about, where we talk about records every week. So absolutely, discoveries, everyone was bringing different things in to the fold from wherever you could find it, because that was the only way. And I never had part of the one thing I always envied that I saw in some other people, but all my closest friends are the same in that they do not have older brothers. I think, or even older siblings. So a lot of time that older
Oh,
sibling who's really into music is the one that turns you on to a lot of
yes.
stuff. So sadly, none of us had.
That's a common thread in some of my
Totally. So none of us
interviews.
had that.
Mhm.
So we became that almost for each other, trading stuff. And this happened all through high school and college. But I would say in particular, I had one really close friend. I'm still good friends with him, who ended up going to art school. Was a very artistic guy. And so we really jammed on this as well, because I think there is this, I keep saying this word artistic with Talking Heads, but there is this art vein to what they're doing, from their cover art to how they construct the songs, and to head to their image, their visual image, whether it's in the movie Stop Making Sense or in interviews, to just the overall strangeness of the lead singer, that is very art school, in my opinion, and kind of art rock. And so, yeah, me and my best friend at the time just really came together on this one, dove deep into the entire catalog probably over the course of a few years. And he even ended up going, like I said, and studying art at art school, which is a more serious commitment than I made to creativity, but still.
Well, I think that, I was looking up I do wanna talk about your podcast really quick. Went to your website to look it up, and I felt like there was a very artsy vibe there. Did he end up helping you design that landing page or
He
no?
didn't actually help with that design, but his design aesthetic influenced us greatly, greatly. And so you may have come across some of his design,
Mhm.
because in our 20s later, we were in a band together. He did all the design for that,
Mhm.
including the
Mhm.
costumes we would wear on
Okay.
stage and all the show posters, and of course the band logo, and when we put out an album, the album cover. And I would just say that even when he's not doing the design anymore, he's a great designer, his influence is still felt now that I, for instance, dabble in design, or even the things that would say I like or don't like are definitely influenced by him.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sweet. So, when I was looking through and I was looking at your podcast and I was like, "Okay." I'm just thinking of the last line in the description. I loved it so much. And this is yeah. Anyways, okay. Love that you guys say that you are gonna review an album and you will weigh in whether you feel like it's one that you need to listen to before you die.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen,
How did you come up with this concept?
the original premise, it's based on a book that a music critic published called 1001 Albums You Must Hear Before You Die. And
Okay.
I believe, I should probably fact check this, but I believe that was the first of what became a cottage industry of 1001 XYZ, that you should do before
Got
you die.
it.
There's food books about it, there's travel books about it, movies, etc. But we liked it as a concept, and we try to not only go through that list and do a deep dive on each record once per week. And the premise is that we're all musicians and we're kind of musically analyzing it in addition to telling the story of how the record got made. And at the end, we vote whether or not we really feel like you needed to hear it before you die, because that is sort of the premise. And I don't think it's always correct. I don't, there's like, there's plenty of stuff you don't need to listen to. And that includes stuff that I would even say I like.
Yeah.
But, we're trying to do two things. We're trying to judge what we like and don't like about it. And I feel strongly that if you're going to be a critic and say you don't like something, you need to have a clear,
Back
articulated
it up.
reason for that. And same if
Yeah.
you do like something. And I just think it's
Yeah.
fun to hash that kind of stuff out with your friends and try to get to the bottom of why you like the things you like. And yeah, ultimately, even some stuff I like, you have to place it in the musical lineage and decide, well, is this really important to your understanding of music?
Yeah.
So that's what we do.
Yeah. Now have you guys reviewed this album?
No, Speaking in Tongues. Actually, Speaking in Tongues is not on the list. Sadly, there's a few other Talking Heads records on the list, and these are
Okay.
some of the issues we might have with
Okay.
it. So yeah, I think it's safe to say this is considered one of the lesser of the Talking Heads records, even though this song looms kind of large in their catalog. I think your average fan would say they like this song, but
Mhm.
they have a couple other powerhouse records. We did do their debut record, which is called Talking Heads 77 on the
Okay.
podcast. It has that song Psycho Killer on it.
Mhm.
And I think we probably
Uh-huh.
covered that 6 months ago or something.
Okay,
So
cool.
we've touched on them. We've told some of their story, and we're all fans.
Well, if you don't mind, I think we'll link that in the show notes and everyone can kind of check that out, get a taste for what you guys are doing. And
Yeah,
then, of course, it relates to the song that we're talking about today. So I think that'd be kind of fun. We'll throw that in the show notes for everybody. Now, I feel like with your podcast, you guys are continuing to serve the purpose of exposing people to music because, right,
yeah,
like we all know maybe like the hit song on the album, but we don't know the full album. And it sounds like you guys are kind of diving into that full album and really giving, you know, credit to why or why not you need to hear this before you die. And I love that you guys are still in that same breath of exploring and sharing music with each other and exposing it. And I think that
absolutely.
that's really awesome.
Thank you.
Just that love of music continuing.
Totally. And like I said, everyone who's doing the podcast, all my co-hosts, we've all been friends and hanging out consistently for like 20 or 25 years. In some cases more than that. And so it really has been a lifelong obsession. We've, like I said, been in various bands and played music together, and now we're sort of spread to the winds geographically. So this was an excuse to come together, continue those
Yeah.
conversations that we would have over a beer, when we are together, and also, yeah,
Right.
as a vehicle for continual discovery. Because listen, of course, when you're a teenager, when maybe even in your 20s, you're passionate about music. You're passionate about a lot of things. You have a lot more time
Yeah.
to listen
Yeah.
and get involved in things, and so it gets harder. But of course, my love and passion for music is still there, and this is a great excuse to hear new things as well as revisit
Yeah.
old favorites. And one more point I want to make in terms of my
Yeah.
opinion about diving into these albums. The album itself is an art form. You could argue that it peaked in the 70s and isn't as important now. But I think it's worth thinking about the entire artistic intention of what someone put out. But almost more importantly, I love even the records I know reasonably well. I love diving into the background or hearing one of my co-hosts tell me the story of the band,
Mhm.
of how they made the record, of where they
Mhm.
were in their career and what the challenges were, because it always, always, always gives me more appreciation for the art. To me, learning about the art is always helps my appreciation for it.
Yeah, I like the songs that I get exposed to, and then I go on Wikipedia, and then, that will breadcrumb trail me over to somewhere else,
Absolutely.
and I end up learning up so much about where they were in life and what they were, experiencing or how they came to develop the music the way they did. So I
Absolutely.
can appreciate that, love of finding out the backstory is
I
interesting.
should
Mhm.
probably mention too, though, the show is called 1001 Album Complaints. It's a little tongue in cheek about the fact that we just like to nitpick production decisions. And having been in the recording studio so many times ourselves, written songs, we come at it. I hope this comes through with the utmost respect for any artist, anyone who puts pen to paper or song to tape. We understand how challenging that is from direct experience.
Mhm.
However, it's fun to poke fun even at the stuff we love. And even great records sometimes have clunker songs on them or just odd production decisions, or hey, that vocal take, you kind of hit a bad note there and you left it in. So I just think that's like all in good fun kind of thing,
Yeah.
to not be too academic about it, but to keep it light and
Yes.
airy, like friends conversation, like the conversations
Yeah.
musicians have in the van going to the next gig or at the bar. This is sort of
Yes.
the idea of the podcast. You're getting to sit in on that.
Yeah. Well, I have to think that you guys being friends for so long has to make for amazing chemistry on the podcast. Just being able to, have old jokes that you guys know and, oh, remember when this happened? We remember when that happened.
Sure.
And then, of course, being able to share some of those things you guys have missed because of distance and because hashtag life. So
Yeah.
I think that's fun too that it, brings up those things that you guys get to talk about. Speaking of recording and
Hmm.
you guys playing together, what does that look like? What was the, progression you guys were in a band for 3 years, you broke up, 2 of you got back together, like, what's the
Yeah.
timeline?
It kinda sounds like you're reading from my bio. That's pretty
Oh.
much exactly what happened.
Oh!
No, it's been a series of things. When we were in high school, I wasn't in the band. A few of the other guys were in a band when I first met them, and that's how we
Okay.
kinda became friends. Then we got together over our love of music. Then flash forward to after college, I moved away from my hometown on the East Coast. I'm from Delaware, Wilmington, Delaware, and I decided to move to San Francisco, California. So I just hopped in my car and went.
Oh, wow.
And over the subsequent couple of years, I convinced pretty much all my old friends to come out there from wherever they were. This is after college.
Uh-huh.
And when we all got there, we formed a band called The Chop, and it was five best friends doing their thing. Three of those guys are co-hosts on the podcast, including myself. We played a bunch of shows, played for like 3 years. It was a little bit of an artistically motivated band, as I alluded to, partly because not everyone in the band actually played their instrument when we started the band. That was its own challenge. In fact, the last guy, Tom, he's one of my co-hosts on the podcast. He was a longtime bass player, but by the time he actually arrived in San Francisco, where we all were, we already had the band going and we already had a bass player. And we said, "I'm sorry, man, you have to learn drums." So he did a great job with it. But yeah, so we were in that band. It was great. It was, it's kind of like your first love. Like we really cared a lot about that. We toured up and down the West Coast and things like that. We made a record together, learned a lot of lessons, fought like brothers do. And it's another connection to Talking Heads because that
Mhm.
time in my life, we played a bunch of these. We didn't play this song, but we played a bunch of Talking Heads songs. We even staged a show one night where all the bands did Talking Heads songs, and we did like three or four of them. It
Awesome.
was kind of a home base for us musically, and literally the first song we ever played as a band in that band was a Talking Heads song. And so this song and this band always remind me of that time as well, kind of in my mid to late 20s when very few responsibilities, wasn't married yet, no kids, nothing like that, and your whole job was to go to the bar and have fun and book the next gig and put a lot of energy out on stage. So anyway, then we eventually broke up, as you mentioned. People then kind of scattered to the winds. Now a couple of the guys are on the East Coast. A few of us are still in California, and I've continued to play music with Tom, my co-host on 1001 Album Complaints. He's a bass player. I'm a guitar player. We both sing.
Cool.
We've made a bunch of records together since then.
Oh, okay.
But as you alluded to, because we're not in our 20s anymore, because we have families now and careers, it's changed its color. It's about making time. It's about, I think that like any passion,
Mhm.
my passion for music has had to adapt to what's going on in your life. And I think that's a good thing. I
Mhm.
think that's a really healthy thing.
Yeah.
So nowadays, we write songs. I'm actually going to go have band practice tonight. It's a little more of an occasional thing where we book a show every once in a while and we have three practices to get tight to go play the show, or we write some new songs and we say we're going to get together 4 weeks in a row to arrange those songs and then we're going to go record them.
Oh.
So a little more one-offy, but it's still a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, and it still fulfills, I mean, I feel like women are always told to fill their cup, but men as well. I mean, and if that's the way that you guys are finding to, satisfy that desire, that passion to still feel like you a little bit, and then you're just a better person for it. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. It's such a healthy expression. So I think that that is super fun. I'm crazy jealous, and I love that you guys still do that and make time for that. With that being said, you're married now, and I'm wondering, does this song play into that at all?
Oh,
Is
absolutely.
this
Yeah.
part of your love story, or is it just something that when you hear it now, you do think of her? Or, how does it apply to life today?
Absolutely. This song is about the concept of your love being like home,
Mhm.
and that we as human beings, I think, wander somewhat aimlessly in the earlier part of our lives until we find that home base. So
Mhm.
absolutely, the word home, which is featured prominently in the lyrics
Mhm.
to this song, make me immediately think of my wife.
Mhm.
And I think it's made even more poignant by the fact that I left my hometown a long time ago,
Sure.
in part because I didn't feel much connection to it, I'll be honest.
Mhm.
And I never it never really occurred to me to go back. My wife is the same way, coming from a different hometown, and we met away from our hometowns and we became each other's home, you know?
Mhm.
So I think that's really powerful stuff. Don't want it to be overly maudlin, but yeah, absolutely. I always think of my wife when a song like this comes on.
Well, I struggle with anxiety from time to time, and I always know that, like, I went to this party on a pontoon, and it was for this lady's birthday, and it should have been, like, so much fun, and for some stupid reason, anxiety just hit me in the middle of it, and I just wanted my husband. Like, when he is around, I know everything's okay. Like, he is my home. He is peace and calm and all those good things, that you need home to be, and loving and supportive and safe and all those things, and so I can appreciate that wholeheartedly, just, when you think of that person. And we've moved many times. I think we just completed our 13th move, I think. And so we've
Oh my.
easily been each other's home in all of those transitions. So I can really relate to that. And that's exactly what I felt when listening to the lyrics of the song. And I would also say the instrumental piece of it definitely feels very artsy, and I really couldn't put my finger on it. Part of it felt like that day in spring when you open all the windows and it's just like such an awesome day and you put this song on, and part of it felt like almost like a happy celebration song, but then the words kind of bring you back down.
Yeah.
And I do feel, I wouldn't say that there's a disconnect, but like, he's in his thoughts. You know how you said earlier it was like a Martian looking down on the humans, and
Yeah.
this does feel very out like a thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that he's like I said, I think it's one of the only times I can think of David Byrne, who's just always been a hero of mine,
Mhm,
really tapping into something that borders on sincerity, but his standard mark is still there, which is definitely aloof and a little unsure and kind of expressing one of the things I like about the song is expressing a lot of vulnerability,
mhm.
which I kind of think is the point of art of any kind,
Yeah,
to, to
yeah.
make yourself
Good point.
vulnerable. If you're not putting something on the line, what's the point, right?
Well, art is always like that deeper inner expression, so you're kind of exposing a piece of yourself when you expose that. I mean, that's really any song, right? The songwriter pours their heart into it, creates this song, and then it gets exposed to the world, and then, you know, we're all the thing one and thing twos out here deciding if it has value or not, where it always has that value because it comes as an expression from that person.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I just think lyrically this it speaks to my it's a bit chicken and egg because I'm not sure if it speaks to my understanding of the human experience or if it's influenced my understanding. But the less
Mm.
we say about it, the better, make it up as we go along. That feels almost like a mission statement to me. I guess I
Mhm.
must be having fun. That sort of reminds me of me as well. A sort of lack of certainness. And, you know, well, actually, I'll talk about the music next. But one other line I wanted to mention was I'm just an animal looking for a home and to share the same space for a minute or two. I think that is as good a description of human love as anything. I think that we try to put all these barriers between ourselves and the natural world and our instincts, but you said it. It's just about comfort and finding a place that you can call home or a person
Mhm.
you can call
Mhm.
home. And I think there's just something so beautiful and primal about that.
Mhm. I like that word primal. That's awesome. Hey, my North Florida women, I want to make memories with you. Let's make a deal. I'll find the venue, you join me, and together we'll make some memories. There's something so unique about watching someone perform music live. I'm going to find the best places right here in the Jacksonville, St. Augustine area for us to catch up on life and enjoy great music. Join the Facebook group, Women Making Memories to a Beat, to check out all the next events. Yeah, I mean, go ahead and go into, if you want to point out any more lyrics, I definitely want you to. And if you want to, dive into the instrumental end of it, that'd be great too. So, share
Yeah.
thoughts and opinions.
I would say aesthetically, let's talk about the instrumentation of the song,
Yeah.
and it's not obvious what I'm about to say, but if you analyze it, you'll get this because it's got a lot going on
Okay.
production wise. There's a lot of
Okay.
rhythmic things happening, a lot of parts kind of come in and out. And yet, there are really only 3 chords in the song, and it repeats throughout the entire song. So there aren't really any changes in the song. A and it's very
Okay.
like I think it's, what this band does really well is I think that a lot of this material, including
Mhm.
this song, was written more or less in a jam setting, right? They come to rehearsal, they have some
Okay,
ideas, they
sure.
play around, and then they find this groove that has this kind of polyrhythmic elements to different things, and they go, "Okay, we can work with that," right? And I think David Byrne, the lyricist and the singer, goes home and writes over
Mhm.
it. And so I think one of the things that makes it so great is how hypnotic it is, right? When you just kind of repeat and repeat.
Yeah.
Now, the part that doesn't repeat is the melody. And so I think what I love about it is the constraints. I like that you don't have as many options of where you can go melodically or how to make the song feel like it moves, right? Because it really is one consistent groove with some parts coming in and out. But the melody rides on top of that and escalates in this really nice way and peaks in this really nice way and fools your ear into thinking that sort of a lot more
Mhm.
is happening, a lot more complexity is happening musically.
I'm definitely gonna have to give it a second
Yeah,
listen.
it's really quite simple. It's just a lot of simple parts layered on top of each other, and then you have this melody kind of floating above that keeps going higher and keeps going higher and kind of peaks and then sort of just resets and does it again. So I dig that too, and I would say, well, I want to say that it's influenced the music I write, but the reality is, I think I need to keep reminding myself that I'd like to get closer and closer to that really simple, beautiful music to me is the most powerful.
Yeah, sometimes the more simple something is, the more difficult it is for us because we do try to make everything so complex or so difficult. Sometimes
Sure,
it's just that easy. Yeah, so just to keep reminding yourself, keep it
absolutely.
simple, kiss. I won't call you stupid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I don't know if you're gonna ask about this, but there's one other memory that I associate with this song, with this band, and it was at a time. So I mentioned in my teenage years when I discovered the band. I mentioned in my 20s when I was in a band with all my best friends, and we cared a lot and we fought a lot, but we also all listened to this kind of music and played some of these songs. But then flash forward to my 30s, and there I had an experience where I was abroad by myself for a while. I went abroad to study language. I had some time off from work and I wanted to do like a language intensive program. And my wife stayed behind for various reasons. And I was by myself and I was feeling homesick, being away from the US, being away from my wife. And I just remember listening to this. It was a whole album, but listening to David Byrne's lyrics and his approach, like I mentioned, it just felt uniquely American to me. And it really that made me feel more connected to home, to both my wife and to America.
Where were you?
I was in Beijing.
Oh, wow, that's far. Okay.
Yeah, and like far culturally, right? So it felt
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine why that felt very American.
Yeah.
I don't know what the traditional Asian instruments are, but I can hear it in my mind, and it doesn't sound like this song at all.
Yeah, they're using different scales. I haven't studied them extensively.
Well, I think that's so interesting, and now you have a small recording label that you've
Yeah,
even taken your passion further and helping other people kinda realize their dreams. I
yeah,
think that that's so amazing. When I clicked on your website, there was one that said, like, Trek rock, surprise rock. What why? What
yeah.
explain more of that to me.
Yeah, so you're referring to the Chop Unlimited. So that was I named it after
Mhm.
our band from when we were all kids.
I love that so
And,
much.
and we kinda keep
Mhm.
that spirit alive because and a lot of it is the same guys and various connections to that group,
Yeah.
making records still and now producing this podcast every week, 1001 Album Complaints. So, one of the things we've started to do that we've found fun and fruitful is doing writing prompts with each other. So I mentioned this idea of constraints. I think creativity is helped by constraints in many cases. There's nothing scarier than the totally blank page,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, we kicked off a few concept albums that really started as writing prompts, just saying, "Hey, I bet you can't write a song about this," or "Let's try to write a song about a couple songs about this." And one was Star Trek: The Next Generation, which was the show we watched when we were growing up.
Yep.
I think compared to true Trekkies, we're pretty not Trekkies. But that said, we do like Star Trek: The Next Generation, and so we made a whole band about it called the Beverly Crushers, and we released a record called Sick Bay, and it's I'm sure you're gonna link it if you want to listen to it. And it's
Yeah.
kind of genre and specific, but it's just a chance to explore a songwriting prompt and to get a little outside. I mean, I'll speak for myself as a songwriter. One of the challenges is to not be overly autobiographical at every single turn. I think a lot of the
Mhm.
records and songs I wrote in the past were almost painfully autobiographical. Maybe no
Okay.
one else finds it so. Anyway, so this writing prompt thing was a helpful way to get out of my own head. So yeah, so that's the Beverly Crushers Trek rock. That's just a little joke about a genre that we
I
invented.
love that.
Surprise rock is also a genre we invented in the Chop because the idea was that everyone was underestimating us, and
Okay.
we just always tried to throw the best party possible, and we were really into theatrics and energy and having a good time and exploding confetti on stage and wearing matching outfits and doing jumping jacks in time and things like that. So people were surprised that we actually rocked. So that's just another little joke, internal joke.
Wow, I love it.
But then yeah, we've branched out from there, to friends of friends and other little projects, and we have some cool stuff on the docket for 2024 as well. But look, ultimately, I see music. It's not a career for me. I have a 9 to 5
Yep.
regular career. All my
Yep.
friends are the same, and that part of the dream has gone away, and I'm happy for that, to be honest with you, because now it allows me to fully treat this as passion and
Mhm.
entertainment and a good time with my friends, and of course something to try to get better
Yeah.
at every time you do it.
I used to love scrapbooking, and I had people that were like, "Oh, you do such a good job. I'd love you to do it for me." And I thought, I want to keep this as a passion. I don't want this to be a job." So
Totally.
I appreciate what you're
Yeah.
saying there and can completely relate. When you would get the CD and it would have the leaflet inside,
Yeah.
did you like dive right into the lyrics? Like, what is the song saying?
Oh yeah.
Or was it more about appreciation of the song? Like, you were so excited to listen to the full album.
I was so into lyrics as a young person. I think it's based on who I started with and how I used to think about myself, and it has shifted a bit over time.
Okay.
But back then, when I first picked up the guitar when I was 16, I wanted to be Bruce Springsteen.
Okay.
I would have said, I mean, that was already a high bar, obviously, but in my mind, Bruce Springsteen was an example of he was a songwriter first,
'Kay.
and he sort of said, well, the best way to achieve my goals of being a songwriter would be also to play guitar and to be able to sing, right? They're somewhat ancillary
Mhm.
to
Yep.
the main goal
Yep.
of writing. And so I think that was my approach for a long time. And in a lot of those bands, that's really what I tried to embody. I tried to be very lyrics first, write stuff that meant stuff to me. And, you can only focus on so many things. But yeah, to answer your original question, I mean, when I was buying CDs, the booklet, I
Yeah.
would memorize the dang booklet right away.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the lyrics, it was like all the details, like where was it made, who played on it.
Okay.
I wanted more information always.
Yeah, me too. I'm pretty interested in it, most things music. So, reading your bio, I was like, "Man, this guy is like all consuming music. I can't wait to talk to him." So, I was really excited to sit down with you and just share a conversation about music and the love for the Talking Heads and this song specifically. This must be the place. So, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you would want to add for the audience about the song, about memories, emotions, anything else?
I would just say that I think it's great you're doing this podcast. Thank you so much for having me, first of all, Tiffany.
Sure.
And it's been great chatting with you. It's been great talking about music. I just encourage anyone out there, whether your passion is music and songs or whatever else it might be, is just to lean into that and feel the
Yeah.
emotions, feel the feels, as the kids say, and really sit in that and take note, right, of the things in life that give you a strong emotional reaction.
Yeah.
Because in my experience, those can be somewhat few and far between, especially as we get older. And
Mm,
but certainly those are the things I think you should guide yourself to. Because what are we on Earth for, if not to feel
yeah.
things and appreciate the world that we live in, right? So yeah, I think it's so cool. I'm certainly lucky that I have music in my life. It's been such a huge part of my life throughout, and it's helped me in so many ways I can't even count, with emotional processing and just all the fun times and my friends,
Mhm.
etc. And having a creative outlet, right? All those things are so important. But really, whatever your thing is, I say lean into it.
Yeah, awesome advice. Well, if you guys do not know this song, please make sure you get onto the Spotify, Apple, or YouTube playlist and check it out. I will, of course, link to it in the show notes as well as some of the other things that we talked about. Rob, thank you so much. You have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much. Great talking to you.
And with that, podcast land, I hope that this conversation sticks with you like the memories to your favorite song. Podcast land, thank you so much for listening. If you had a few memories of your own pop up with this episode, make sure to take a screenshot, tag me on social, Tiffany Mason or virtually you, and share those memories. I know y'all are listening, and I'd love to hear the memories you were reminded of with this song. Also, would you do me a favor and share this episode with someone you think would enjoy it? This is the best way you can help me to grow my audience. Can't wait to dive into my next guest's memories with a beat. Hit subscribe now. You don't want to miss the next episode.